Wales get their job done against Georgia. Very impressive first half. Second half, a fair bit more competitive. 43 points to 14. So the overall score looks pretty one-sided when you look at that. And I mean, at half time, it was 29-0. So that first half performance from Wales, absolutely clinical. Second half, the Georgians definitely more in it. So there's a few good takeaways for the Georgians there. They'll be disappointed that they let things get away from them so much in that first half. And equally, Warren Gatland will probably be a little bit disappointed that the guys maybe took the foot off the gas a wee bit once that bonus point was secured. But ultimately, it's kind of gone according to the script. And I mean, compared to that one other previous result, which was relatively tight between the two teams, this one 43-14 kind of shows the difference in class between your Six Nations champion and your team still looking to get into that competition one way or the other. But yeah, it started off early. Jonathan Davis, who was in everything in that first half, he got a try, and it was from the back of a scrum. And actually, the Welsh scrum, especially in that first quarter of the game, was looking really solid. It wasn't being moved back by the Georgians, and it actually won at least a penalty or two. But yeah, from the back of a scrum, they have a little move, and he goes through the gap as clinical as he is, and they make it 5-0 early. It should have been 7. Somehow Dan Bigger missed that conversion, hits the post. It will be a highlight reel moment for him for the rest of his career because it was an absolute sitter. It was literally right out in front, and he somehow missed it. Didn't end up costing them, given that the scoreline was 43-14, but he'll hope that in his career he never has a kick quite like that one again. 2 scrums early, like I said, Wales looking very good. The TMO at one point checks Josh Adams for like a contestable ball going up with one of the Georgian guys. He concludes that the Georgian guy kind of jumped into him, so there's nothing doing there. 6 minutes, Dan Bigger gets a penalty. It's 8-0. 7 minutes on the restart, the Georgians kick it out on the full. So as sharp as the Welsh started this game, the Georgians started it poorly, which is really, it's just not acceptable if there's going to be any kind of result for the Georgians, which is going to be positive. They needed to start sharp, and they did not. 8 minutes from the resulting scrum from that kick out on the full right on halfway, the Welsh scrum just monsters the Georgians. And that's kind of the one area I thought the Georgians might be able to dominate, and they did get better as the game went on, but the Welsh were really just too much for them early on, culminating in that scrum penalty. A few minutes later, Tipuric gets a try. The Welsh are going through phases. There's a ruck formed. There's nobody defending on the side. He picks it up and just waltzes straight over for the try. So Tipuric, again, kind of like Jonathan Davis, was everywhere for large periods of this game. So that makes it 15 points to 0. And then only like 5 minutes later, there's a nice pass, a little inside ball from Bigger to Adams. And on 19 minutes, Adams gets a try. And yeah, he runs a great line. It's 22 points to 0. So it's more than a point a minute. The clock says 20 by the time the conversion goes over, and it's 22 points to 0 after 20. I'm doing a live stream with the guys. And yeah, it's just Wonderland video game stuff for Wales. They're just that clinical. 25 minutes, Georgia finally get on the attack. They get a line break, and the line break is the hooker and the blindside flanker. So I guess as Georgian a line break as you can get, that's the line break they got. The line break is actually disrupted when one of the Georgian passes gets knocked down by Gareth Davis. The TMO has a look at it, but they determined that it travelled backwards, so it's not like a deliberate knockdown by the letter of the law, so nothing is doing there. And then from the resulting play, Georgia wins a scrum penalty, but they can't get any points from here. And just before halftime, Liam Williams gets his try. It's from a Jonathan Davis pass. It ends up being kind of a bounce pass, but still he gets the ball and goes over for the try. So it's 29 points to 0 at halftime. Wales looking very, very good value for their halftime lead. The stats were 245 run meters to 116. Possession slightly more with the Georgians, 51%. Territory was 50-50. Wales tackling was 88%. Their defence was just looking solid. The Georgians were looking out of ideas for most of that first half. Georgian tackling percentage was at 67, and that makes sense when you've conceded 29 points in that time. So second half, though, the Georgians definitely improved. You could see the halftime in the sheds camera. Graham Roundtree is going nuts at the Georgian guys in the sheds. And they start off with a try pretty early. Mamukashvili gets a try on 43 minutes. It's from a big maul. The TMO has a look at it, but you can see the ball is clearly grounded. And that makes it 29 points to 7. 46 minutes, though. Wales, they get an advantage from a maul. Bigger has a cross kick. Liam Williams picks it up and dots it down, but the TMO spots a knock on. It's TMO or the touch judge. Touch judge spots a knock on, so there's no try there, but it was almost an absolute class try, but it wasn't to be. I only saw it the one time. I don't think they replayed it, at least on my stream. I would have liked to seen it again, but the touch judge was adamant that he knocked it on, so yeah. Wales build pressure, 47 minutes. Brigvadza, the backup hooker who's just come on, gets yellow carded for collapsing a Welsh maul, which is for all money looking like it's just going to steamroll over and get a try. And somehow that yellow card seems to inspire the Georgians. It lifts them. They start playing better with the man down. Like Wales go 13 or more phases, and then the Georgian winger comes and intercepts one of the passes from Gareth Davis. They get a scrum penalty with a man less on the field, so it's 15-14. The Georgians win a scrum penalty. 64 minutes, though, Thomas Williams does eventually get a try. It's 15-15 at this point from memory. And it's George North going down the right wing. Didn't have as much ball on his wing, seemingly, as Adams on the other. But he puts a kick through, and Thomas Williams, who's come on for Gareth Davis, shows some proper gas. And he gets to the ball first, is able to ground it. So that one is a try. That makes it 36 points to 7. 68 minutes, though, the Georgians, they're not done yet. They win a scrum penalty. They tap it. They go through a few phases. They're 5 meters out, 4 meters out, 3 meters out, 2 meters out, 1 meter out. And they finally do get over the line through Chava. Apologies for the pronunciation, but it's a good try. And it is 36 points to 14. And the Georgians really looking good value for that. But the last score of the game does go to Wales with George North, 76 minutes. He combines with Thomas Williams, who was really a live wire. He was ducking and diving, beating tackles. And George North has no rights to score that try. It's a typical George North try in that he looks like he's covered. There's multiple guys around him. He still manages to get through and get the ball down. So the score finishes 43 points to 14. As I said, good win to Wales. Very good first half. Second half, Georgia were a lot more in it. I'm not sure how much of it was, as I said, Wales taking the foot off the gas. How much of it was Georgia coming back into it, because Georgia were full of errors at the start of the game. They looked like the occasion was getting to them a bit, but it could have just been that Wales were just that clinical that they couldn't live with them. So we'll have to see more games from both these teams to see exactly where they're at, but at least in that second half, the Georgians can lift their heads high. That they both scored 2 tries in that second half, so there wasn't much between the teams in that second half. Full-time stats: run meters 454 to Wales, 270 to Georgia. Kind of big gap was put in the first half, but also second half a wee bit as well. Possession 56% to Wales, territory 58% to Wales, so they had the better of the game. Tackling percentage, Wales remained very high with 86%, slightly down from halftime, 2% down, but very solid. Georgia actually upped their game 10% to 77% by the full-time whistle, so that was a good statement of intent for them that they did improve into the game. Penalties conceded was 10 by Wales, 7 to Georgia, so that's one area, I guess, of slight concern for the Welsh, that they were conceding a few penalties and a few at scrum time. Turnovers conceded, though, Georgia, despite having less of the ball, only 44%, they conceded 19 turnovers to Wales' 12, so really costly. Just those errors, kicking the ball out on the fill, a few knock-ons, kind of coach killer moments for the Georgian guys in a game where you really need to be absolutely spot on They just weren't there at times, but good second half, like I said. So yeah, I mean, it's a bonus point win for Wales in terms of the scoreboard. It's looking very pretty. Maybe good for them to get that extra bit of challenge in the second half in preparation for their next game against Australia. If it had just gone all their own way and they'd gotten 80 points to nil, I'm not sure how much that would have done in terms of preparation for that Australian game. It was good though. They also got to get some guys on. Patchell got on with like at least 15 minutes to go. Thomas Williams came on. Good portion of the second half to play. So able to get the minutes spread around some of the team as well. In terms of individuals, 113 run meters for Josh Adams. He got 5 clean breaks and 5 defenders beaten, which is pretty ridiculous to get 5 clean breaks in one game. Navidi, ever reliable, had 14 out of 14 tackles. He was a busy guy. Kacharava for Georgia had 12 out of 14. He's the centre, which is also a pretty good effort for a guy in his position too. Both these teams' next game is on Sunday. Georgia have got Uruguay, so they'll be looking to pick up their first win. And Wales, it's the big one. It's against Australia. So, yeah, they'll be looking back at the tape, see what they can find from Australia's game against Fiji and which of their own areas they can work on from this game. But interesting, Australia had a really good second half in their game. Wales had a really good first half in this game. So when these two key teams come together, it is going to be very interesting. But yeah, what did you guys think of the game? Wales' 43-14 victory over Georgia. How convinced are you by them? Again, how much did you see it as them maybe letting up in the second half or the Georgians coming into it? But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.